When the world's greatest bike race starts at sea, you know you're not in for a run-of-the-mill 3 weeks. Granted, there were certain elements you could set your clock by.
The missile from the Isle of Man has got his first win of the 2011 Tour de France.
And others that perhaps could have done with a 7-second delay. But there were times when you really couldn't believe what you were seeing.
Spinning crash, oh goodness me, that hit the side of the car.
And moments when you just didn't want to believe.
Oh dear me, this looks as if this is going to be the end of the Tour de France for Bradley Wiggins.
In the end, the finishers and the fallers, the punishing climbs and the terrifying descents, the motorbike and heli shots, the scenery, the bravery and the lunacy, all combined to produce a tour just like every other tour. Unique. Hello, we're on the Champs-Élysées, just in case you couldn't quite place the backdrop, trying to resist the temptation to get nostalgic about this tour before it's even over. It'll be worth holding back, though, because there's a bit of history still to be made before we can sign this one to the record books, namely the first ever British winner of the green jersey, unless that is something goes horribly wrong for Mark Cavendish today. Added to that, we've got the first ever brothers to stand on the podium together, and the first Australian winner of the race overall. Now, it's a shorter than usual run into the final sprint of the Tour this year. Just 95 kilometres starting out from the Paris suburb of Créteil, where Lanfignon held a licence with the local club, the Tour paying its respects to the former winner who died last August. 51 kilometres to go when they hit the Place de la Concorde, so more than half the final stage will be on the Champs-Élysées. The intermediate sprint comes with 35 kilometres left to race, and the 9th time they cross the finish line, they'll be doing it for the stage win and the green jersey. As ever, the early part of the day was a bit of a rolling cocktail party. But once the champagne photo call was over, superstition kicked in, and Cadel Evans ditched the special yellow bike his mechanics had been up late constructing for him and switched back to the one that had got him through the previous 3,300 odd kilometres. The sight of the Eiffel Tower, as ever, was the first sign for the riders to start tightening the Velcro on their shoe fastenings, because they knew the madness would start once they hit the Champs-Élysées.
They head round now to start their third circuit of 8, but this time around at the top in the shadow of the Arc de Triomphe, Mark Cavendish must sprint to try and keep his green jersey. Now at the moment a little breakaway is getting clear. Ben Swift started it on the far right of the road as they now rejoin a breakaway of 6 riders. We've got Paulinho of Radio Shack, Karan of Liquigas, the boy on the far side there, Riblon, Swift, Jeremy Roy again with that red number as the most aggressive rider of this year's Tour de France, and Lars back. There goes Jeremy Roy.
Yeah, Jeremy Roy has certainly been looking for the move on every occasion that he could in the Tour. Ben Swift very happy with this breakaway. 3rd time over the line, 6 laps left to go.
The faithful boys in red keeping control of the peloton, always thinking of Cadel Evans, keeping him safe. The one thing that can rob his race, remember, is a silly fall at this stage of the race. Mark Cavendish just keeping an eye on things because these boys are taking away major points at the sprint point. Well, there's no doubt that Cav is taking this series. He's lined up behind his teammates here. Mark Renshaw, the big lead-out man, has got him on his slipstream. Rojas is here as well as they try to get it together now. The 2 lead-out men are going to take over.
Well, Rojas is coming on the outside in the lime green jersey there. Now watch what they're going to try and do here. They're going to try and get as many riders in front of Rojas as possible. You can see Cavendish, Phil, is going to get himself... Look at the acceleration of Cavendish here.
Well, it's all a done deal, this is. It's only for 9 points. Rojas is coming up late. He got 3rd there, so he's lost a couple of points.
And that was because Renshaw came in, the Australian lead-out man for Mark Cavendish, came in to make sure that he got across the line, put a bit of separation between Mark Cavendish and Rojas. So this is on the far side, and they're picking up a slight tailwind on the descent of the Champs-Élysées, and they'll push their speeds up to 60 kilometres an hour. There's the result of that sprint confirmation. Corin was first from the group to go over, but we were looking at the green jersey sprint because that was just a little bit more important in the overall win for the green jersey competition. Now, let's just have a look. There's a little bit of a problem there. Oh, that's Cavendish. Cavendish got a problem with his machine there. Now, this has happened just at the top end of the Champs-Élysées. Not sure what's wrong with his bike at all. He's waiting to get it sorted out. He's got a teammate who's waited for him there. Now, this is what I was explaining to you all about. This is still a bike race here. Now, if Mark Cavendish can't get himself back into the peloton this afternoon, Jose Joaquim Rojas has a very good chance of getting himself major points at the end of the day.
As we gaze across Paris now, we're waiting for the riders to come out of the tunnel, and then they'll be up underneath the Ferris wheel, heading round to the start-finishing line of, well, the finish line, we better call it, on the Tour de France, which will take them for the last 2 laps and 12 kilometres of the day of racing. Paris is ready now for a sunshine finish to the Tour de France.
No, it certainly is. Just on the far side of the river, you might just see the older railway station of Orsay, which is now the Musée d'Orsay, as these riders now make that left-hand bend once again underneath the Jardin de Tuileries, up onto the other side for the Rue de Rivoli, and still that gap is locked in at 32 seconds. I can't believe that a breakaway today, Phil, will outwit the sprinters.
Well, they've got a little bit of help now, because Quick Step, of all the teams, they lost their sprinter, Tom Bonan, very early on. They still might have a sprint finish, but they've started to pick up the race here. They haven't had a lot to take out of this Tour, have they?
No, they certainly haven't. They lost their other sprinter, Gert Steegmans, who also was a winner here on the Champs-Élysées a couple of years ago, but they have got Gerard Scholik. And on occasions, he has tried to rival Mark Cavendish, so maybe that's why they've decided to come forward and try and get themselves a little bit of glory on the final day of the race.
Well, we're going to go through and see 2 laps to go this time as we swing back down the Place de la Concorde, turning right. Ben Swift here, the man who started it all on lap number 2, I think he got away. He is now trying to drag this race clear, because if it became a sprint finish between these 6, then bet your money on Ben, because he is a very, very fast finisher. And he's the boy in black, and you see Lars back, he's not helping. He's letting them get into the line and continue to work. All Lars wants to see now is the return of the peloton and Mark Cavendish. Racing across now into the Champs-Élysées. This time they go through the finish line. There will be just 2 circuits to go, and they still haven't got this breakaway.
Yes, but another team coming forward now, big powerful Italian team, as they go across the finishing line for the 7th time, lining up for those 2 final laps. It's Team Lampre of Alessandro Petacchi, who now wants to come to the front and try and whip up the pace. They realise how urgent it's starting to look with 12 kilometres remaining.
Yes, well, Petacchi has been here before. He's never won on the Champs-Élysées before, and he has been a green jersey winner. He's also been a stage winner of the Tour de France, and he's trying to now stay in touch here, so it's interesting. They've put their team up here, and the BMC, the team of Cadel Evans, working as well. 27 seconds, it's having an effect. 2 to go.
Ooh, slowly but surely, but they want to make sure they pull that breakaway back before the start of the final lap, because otherwise it makes it a little bit complicated on the run in towards the finish. Alessandro Petacchi won 2 stages of the Tour de France last year, 1 into Brussels and 1 into Reims.
There's a few riders there now with their mouths wide open here as they all look at to see who is moving whom up towards the front of the peloton.
It's always a bit chaotic at the front end of the main field, especially when you're starting to line up for a sprint, and even more so when it's on the final day of the race. Guys will take unbelievable risks to make sure they can place themselves in an ideal position. The peloton looks like we've got 2 drag races going here, one on the left-hand side, Team Astana, one on the right-hand side, and that's Team Lampre.
That's exactly what we have got right now, as they do split right down the middle here. They're going to have to queue up to get round the top in the Arc de Triomphe, because the breakaway is speeding down the other side. Can't really tell on the television, but it's actually a cobble road, this, and it is quite uneven. You bounce your way down, and you are riding down the other side at around about 60 kilometres an hour. We've got 27 seconds the gap. This isn't coming down quick enough yet.
Well, that's certainly why you see very often the riders moving right over to the right-hand side, and they try and ride actually down the gutter, because the gutter is a slightly smoother ride. But here, they're all over the place. You've got the line of Cadel Evans BMC in the middle. You've got the Quick Step riders over on the right-hand side, Astana on the left-hand side. It's a big scramble now, and the gap, as you say, Phil, it's certainly not coming down as quickly as a lot of guys here would probably want it to.
Well, the camera makes it look shorter than it is. They're going to make the turn at the top here. Ben Swift started it all. He seems to be one of the strongest working men in the breakaway. Jeremy Roy in 2nd place there. Caran goes round in 3rd. Palguinho, Riblon, and Lars back. We call him the ticket collector. He's going to sit in the last coach and watch it all happen.
He's hoping for some kind of mistake with this breakaway group, and if they don't get caught, he's there to try and take over the victory for Team HTC High Road. You can see HTC High Road there just sitting in the wings over to the right-hand side. The man who put his hand out there was Bernie Eisel, the Austrian rider on the squad.
I've had a couple of guys tumble there, so watch closely to see if they're all safely around the corner. It looks as though they are this time. 1.5 laps to go to the finish. So 4 teams have announced they want to win the stage today. HTC High Road, Garmin Cervelo for Farah, Omega Pharma Lotto for Andre Greipel, and the pink jerseys there also for Alessandro Patacchi, and maybe Gerald Cholik's quick-step team.
You might just have noticed they pull that red car out of the gap. That's the car of the race referee. He rides behind the breakaway group to pass information out via race radio to everybody else in the event. But once the gap starts to come down, he makes sure he gets out of that gap so he doesn't falsify the race in any way. And the reason is because it's now come down to 22 seconds. And at these speeds, that's about 300 yards.
It's the French champion, Sylvain Chavanel. He hasn't had as good a tour this year as he had last year when he wore the yellow jersey. But nonetheless, he is pushing on for his team now. They're trying to get something out of this tour. Hasn't been a great tour for the Belgian setup. The pink boys are all riding for Patacchi. Very shortly, watch out for the white jerseys of Mark Cavendish to start to try and get control at the front.
Well, you get this is an amazing chance for us to see the speed as we go down the Champs-Élysées. We're looking at 40 miles an hour these guys are doing after 3 weeks of bike racing. Sammy Sanchez, the leader of the King of the Mountains, Phil, is not very happy with the speed here. He's just sitting in about 7 or 8 positions from the back. He too will be waiting to get this bike race over and done with.
Quick-step are really pushing the pace here now as they got this line stretched out. It's down to 22 and holding. It's just gone to 20 seconds now.
That's Nicky Terpstra just swinging off, former Dutch national champion, allowing the French national champion to come forward. They've pulled back another couple of seconds, but you know, they're leaving this very late. It's a very precarious thing to do. We're keeping a close eye on Mark Cavendish, moving up through the main field. He's got 2 very deep-rimmed carbon fibre wheels in there this afternoon. That's to give his wheels rigidity and also to improve the aerodynamics of his machine.
And it won't be affected by crosswinds because he's racing into a headwind finish today, so they may have to leave their move until a little bit later than normal. A couple of years ago when Cavendish won here, he won by so far he couldn't see the peloton, and that was a tailwind finish. But it's head today as they go off around the Place de la Concorde again. This is the breakaway. The man at the back is Cavendish's teammate. All he wants to see is these boys caught and put back in the pack. They don't want to be caught. The gap is now down to 18 seconds. Not long now before we get the bell for the last lap. And really, as you say, Paul, they would have preferred this to be caught before we start the last lap.
Absolutely. It's always a bit precarious when you start the last lap and there's a breakaway group still off the front, because it can make a little bit of a mess of your lead-out train, and that's the one thing that Mark Cavendish and HTC High Road have had to, and they've got to perfection over the last couple of seasons, this lead-out train. Each rider lining up behind each other to have their sprinter positioned in an ideal position just to drop him off, if you like, at 250 metres from the line.
Underneath the Tuileries again for the penultimate time now, then out onto the Rue de Rivoli with the Ferris wheel there turning madly. Everybody hoping they've got the right ticket to get to the top just as the Tour de France goes underneath them and they get the best view in the house. Now 18 seconds, it still says this is amazing, but these boys are really being defiant in the breakaway. This isn't the way it should be on the last day, says the sprinters. They're still holding, it's not coming down at all, and they are going to hear the bell once we get onto the Champs-Élysées.
Yep, that's what it's all about. I noticed Thor Hushoff was fairly close to the front for Team Garmin Cervelo, and he will be looking after the American sprinter Tyler Farrar. But look at the length of that line going down the Rue de Rivoli. Now we are hammering around this course. The average speed as they go under the 1 kilometre to go to the finish line is very close to 54 kilometres an hour over the last half an hour of racing.
Stage winner last year in the Tour in the white there, Christophe Riblin, but he hadn't come close this year. He's tried and hasn't quite made it to the finish. The boy in black for the Sky team, Ben Swift. It's his first Tour de France and he is going to finish it today. That's a total achievement in itself. But I think for Ben, if he gets the finish with these 6 boys, he'll be going home with a stage win in his pocket too.
That's what he's looking for. That's what he really would like to try and get if he can on this final day on the Champs-Élysées. Around this corner, he will continue to pound on those pedals because he knows if it does come down to the sprint, he's got a big chance of getting himself the victory. You can hear the bell just in the background.
You can probably hear the bell ringing. Well, that's for the breakaway. The peloton are coming through. The gap is 13 seconds. 6 kilometres to go.
Well, 13 seconds, what's going to be very difficult now for the breakaway Phil is to survive on the uphill part of the course, because just looking at these guys, the fatigue is now starting to come in. The legs are burning with the lactic acid that's starting to mount up in them, but there's still, I'm surprised to see that HTC High Road still haven't come to the front to take the responsibility. They're backing off and waiting for the very last moment.
This is amazing. This is not the usual way the sprinters take it to the finish of the Tour de France. They normally like space to organise those sprint terrains. It's not working out. Zhang Li has just gone off on the right there. Somebody from Rabobank.
Carlos Barredo jumping out of the pack here. It's a very good move by him to try and really make a mess of everything for the sprinters. He knows he's got to try and ride across a gap here of 12 seconds, and a little bit of panic on board the Sprinters Express on the left-hand side of the road. Who's going to chase down this man? And
so there should be. He's sensed that this isn't going to a normal sprint finish with the trains all doing it. He's taking his chance here, Carlos Barredo. And if he gets up there, this might be a very different finish to this Tour de France. Don't worry about Cadel Evans, all you viewers in Australia, because he's going to win the Tour now. He's 3 kilometres away from safety before the finish of the Tour.
Phil, that gap is now no longer 12 seconds. Swifty, look at him. You see he's riding in the gutter just on the right-hand side of the road there, and that's the smoothest part. It's a long piece of granite, and that's what gives him that little bit of an advantage. He knows now if anybody can ride off the front end of a group like this, Swifty can. He's got a great background on the track, and he knows how to really push himself into those pain levels. On his wheel, though, marking every move, every pedal stroke, is Lars Bak.
Yes, and Lars will ride now because there's nobody left. He's got to ride now, and he's taking on Ben Swift. Swift, who's won races this year in Australia, Spain, Switzerland, and the United States, is trying to win here in the centre of Paris, and it's the last day of the Tour de France. Is this spoiling the perfect day for the sprinters? Well, Ben Swift would love it to be that way, and he's trying desperately now to hang on to Lars Bak.
Well, he can't quite get into the slipstream of the big rider from Denmark, who's got a couple of bike lengths advantage. Carlos Barredo had tried again and again. The gap now down to just a mere 8 seconds as they take the turn at the top end of the Champs-Élysées. Swifty's lost the back wheel of Lars Bak. Now, I wonder what's going to happen with the HTC High Road lead out. They may well just give the chance to their man to get himself the victory, and what a lone victory that would turn out to be.
As soon as Sky have seen that Swifty can't make it, they're going to reorganise situations now for Boyson Hagen, their sprinter who's back in the pack. In the green jersey is Mark Cavendish. The white jersey in the front are his teammates. He's having to fight to get himself organised here. This is a most disorganised approach to the line, but now they've got the front. The team of HTC High Road all of a sudden have got a dead straight line. The train is about to leave the station.
22 years old, American TJ Van Garderen in first place, Danny Pate in second place, Peter Velits third. This is the big lead-out train they've been waiting for. They've got the big power, but they're in a difficult situation here, Phil, because they've got their own teammate Lars Bak at the front. However, I must believe that Mark Cavendish feels extremely confident that he can come up with the win this afternoon. Otherwise, they wouldn't chase down a teammate.
Well, Lars Bak is having to ride against his own team at the moment, knowing that they might eat him up. Cavendish is in a perfect position to the left of the bunch in the green jersey here. The team of Thor Hushoff dead centre in the white jersey. The blue helmet to Garmin Savella. They're trying to get Tyler Farrar up here, but there's always somebody willing to spoil the party. I can't see, it looks like 75 kilometres an hour there as they go down the side of the Champs-Élysées.
Yeah, a little bit bumpy as we go down the Champs-Élysées. We're pushing it up, we're touching 45 miles an hour. Swifty lost the wheel of Lars Bak. Now, this is a very strange finish now, because poor old HTC High Road, they've got the firepower, they know what they have to do, but they don't really want to chase down their own man.
Well, they're dangerous moments too for Cadel Evans, because they're bumping and barging the sprinters now, but the good news is we're inside 3 kilometres to go to the finish, and so there's no way now Cadel can lose the Tour de France. The 3 kilometre rule would apply if he were to crash now. He's won whatever happens as he heads out now on his last half lap of honour for Australia. Now all that Mark Cavendish wants to do is win the last stage, and that will also confirm his green jersey.
There's only one man at the front of this race now, and it's Mark Cavendish's own teammate as he sweeps across on the Champs-Élysées. Ben Swift is back in the peloton. Now this is going to be a rather interesting final 2.5 kilometres once they get themselves to the Rue de Rivoli.
Round the back, heading now for our last visit beneath the Garden of the Tuileries, as the peloton still tries to wrap wrap this up. Desperate moments. Lars back. The first man to congratulate back if he were to win would be Mark Cavendish. Just reward for all the work he has done for Cavendish throughout 3 weeks of the Tour de France, but it's not going to happen. They're all together, led by the champion of Belgium, Philippe Gilbert.
Also the rider from Garmin in the blue helmet, that was Christian Van der Velde, whipping up the pace. All of a sudden, Lars Bak has been wiped away. Hushoff into second position, looking over his shoulder. He's looking to see if he can find the shape of his own team sprinter, Tyler Farrer. Taking a back seat now, just for a little while. You've got Bernie Eisel, but behind Bernie Eisel, you've got Matty Goss, you've got Mark Renshaw, then you've got Tony Martin in the mix somewhere, and the green jersey of Cavendish.
But
Cavendish
forget,
back now is in the driving
right
seat.
There, leading out, Rojas is in a brilliant position now to get the drop on Cavendish. And if Rojas finishes a few places ahead of Cavendish, Cavendish will lose his green jersey. This is the last turn down under the gardens. Then when you come out, you're 1 and a bit kilometres from the line.
Now they go under this tunnel of the Louvre now for the last time. They'll take the left-hand bend, and then all of a sudden across the road there, Phil, they will start to see that red kite, which will indicate the final kilometre of the Tour de France 2011, and still they're waiting to pick up the pace. Team HTC High Road, they've been here before. They've taken Mark Cavendish to the victory on 2 occasions on this very street, on this very avenue, and they will wait until the last possible moment to open up their firepower. Here it comes now. This is Bernie Eisel.
This is not a usual finish for them, but it looks as though Eisel this time has got himself under control. Cavendish is trying to hold position at the back behind Mark Renshaw. 900 metres to go to the end of the Tour de France. Cavendish has won twice here before. Can he get the hat-trick as they change partners at the front?
Tony Martin now, the winner of the time trial yesterday, is right up into first position. Behind him it's Matty Goss. Behind Matty Goss it's Renshaw. They've lined up the first 4 positions here as they come across the Place de la Concorde for the last time.
The world champion peels off. He's done his job for Tyler Farrer. So Hushoff drops out of it. Now, this is where the missile launched as we entered onto the Champs-Élysées 2 years ago when he won by a mile. It's a deja vu. It's just Cavendish now is in the third wheel. They've left it later because of the headwind that blows down this straight. Now Renshaw will go. Cavendish is going with him. Boysenhagen is trying to get on his wheel. He'll never be as fast as Mark Cavendish. Eyes down, because this one will be Mark Cavendish's third win. As try as they might, Mark Cavendish gets win number 3 of his in history on the Champs-Élysées. He gets his 5th stage win of the Tour de France, and as he just told us, he gets the green jersey as champion. And once he's clear, there's no way that man ever runs out of fuel. There is the man who's won the Tour de France, Cadel Evans, the first Australian to win the Tour de France.
He is, but let's start with the first British winner of the green jersey competition, and for the 3rd year running, winner of this stage. Mark Cavendish beat Edvald Boasson-Hagen, Andre Greipel, Tyler Farrer, Fabian Cancellara, Daniel Oss, Borut Bozic and Thomas Weitges. Pretty much everyone else finished in the main field on the same time, the notable exception for us being David Miller, who's been riding with bronchitis and lost 35 seconds on the final day. Well, the race director himself, Christian Prudhomme, said it was an anomaly that a sprinter of Mark Cavendish's quality had yet to win the green jersey, so Cav's victory could be viewed as a sort of correction. It could also be seen as another milestone in what's becoming one of the great careers in professional cycling.
So happy, man. Yeah, you know, we worked so hard for it. You know, they changed the rules this year to... well, they thought if you win 5 stages, normally you get the green jersey. But so it has worked out. But whereas in past years, if they'd have probably done the same thing, I'd have had an armchair ride to the green jersey. We really had to fight for it this week, and it's been a lot of effort, but it's so worth it in the end. You know, we've gone home with 6 stage wins here, 5 from me, 1 from Tony, green jersey. We can be super happy.
Super seems to be the prefix of choice on the race this year, and hard to argue against it. Now, here's how the 2011 general classification will go into the record books. Cadel Evans wins the 2011 Tour de France ahead of Andy Schleck by 1 minute and 34. Frank Schleck is third at 2 minutes 30. Thomas Voeckler misses out on a podium spot to the disappointment of the whole of France and many other people watching around the world. He was fourth at 3 minutes 20. Then it's Alberto Contador, fifth at 3:57. Samuel Sanchez, sixth at 4:55. Then the Italian pairing of Damiano Cunego and Ivan Basso, 7th and 8th at 6:05 and 7:23. Tom Danielson was the top American. He was 9th. Christophe Perrault and Pierre Rolland were 10th and 11th. In fact, France had their best tour for years with 5 riders in the top 15. Best place of the Brits overall was the relentless Geraint Thomas. David Miller was 76th, Mark Cavendish 130th and Ben Swift 137th. We lost 31 men on the way round, 167 finished, the 167th of them being Fabio Sabatini, 3 hours, 57 minutes and 43 seconds behind Cadel Evans. Second twice in 2007 and 2008, then 30th and 26th the past 2 years. It was starting to look as though Cadel Evans' shelf life as a Tour contender was close to expiring. At 34, he's the oldest Tour winner since the Second World War. He was also the strongest man in one of the hardest tours we've seen in a while.
Cadel, of course you've had to stand on that podium before, just not on that top spot. Can you put into words what the difference feels like?
Personally, going second so close on 2 occasions before was so close yet so far. But this year to be there and with a sizable lead as well to come into the coming right on the Champs-Élysées, it just makes it a pleasure just to be here.
I'm second again, but yeah, I knew that also yesterday. But I'm not. Like I said, I don't go home as a loser, and I mean, these 3 weeks there's been no hiding and no lying. The strongest have won the Tour, and that was Cadel. And hats off to him, but I'll be back and fight him next year.
You Tour riders are hard as nails, we all know that, so you all have immense self-belief. But when did the penny drop with you that this was very winnable for you this Tour?
Oh, you know, the Tour de France, it's something you work for years and years, and it can be all lost in a second. So you never really know it until you've really crossed the line. With 4 kilometres, 5 kilometres to go yesterday in the time trial, things were shaping up really nicely, but it's not over till you cross the finish line, and now we have. So for me, it's done and won now.
The King of the Mountains competition was done and won 2 days ago at the top of Alpe d'Huez. Samuel Sanchez, a serious overall contender, takes the title, just like the organisers intended when they redesigned the competition. There was further hope for the home nation in the performance of Pierre Rolland, who shepherded Thomas Voeckler through the mountains and then rode away to take the win at Alpe d'Huez. He's the best young rider. His fellow Frenchman Jérôme Coppel is third. Estonia's Ryan Taaramäe is an exciting rider too. Garmin Cervelo had a fabulous tour, 4 stage wins, including the team time trial, and all 9 men on the podium. Although if Dave Zabriskie looks a little flat on the far right of your picture, that's because he's a cardboard cutout, having crashed out on stage 9. And finally, there is the 1-2-3, made 3D. Cadel Evans in a Schleck sandwich. So the 2011 Tour de France is in the books. A fabulous race, but the drawback, Chris, is there's so much to try and get in at the end of it without leaving out important stuff. Start with the winner, Cadel Evans.
I think dogged is a great word to describe him, and tenacious. I mean, he really had to work hard for that, and there were moments in the race where he had to do all the work. The Galibier stage, he sat on the front for 10 kilometres, barely looking around for any assistance, where he had to chase Andy Schleck down, and of course the final time trial. So he did everything he could, but he did have to fight all of the way, and he didn't put a foot wrong in the first week either, so a very worthy winner.
Andy Schleck showed what a great rider he is with that solo attack on stage 18. Elsewhere in the race, there were questions about his mentality. Do you think he perhaps needs to cut the cord with his brother to become a great and selfish champion?
I think in this tour, more than ever before perhaps, that he did ride for himself, and he did ride well. I think at the start, when they were looking at each other all the time in the Pyrenees, we thought, oh, maybe they're just going to be really too worried about what's happening to the other one. But that attack, as you mentioned on the Galibier, that was the highlight of the race for me. It was such an audacious move with 2 hours racing to go, and it animated the whole thing, and everything that happened behind him made it the best stage that I've ever seen.
Now, not to skip over Frank, all right, to skip over Frank, no disrespect. Thomas Voeckler in 4th place. He made the race for France. He made the race for many of us.
Yeah, again, the same stage. The images of him trying to stay in yellow and just managing it were absolutely fantastic. I think he is very much the people's champion, and that's what this race has brought out, really. Such moments of drama. They weren't always about the winning, but the Schlecks, I think they rode the best race that they possibly could, and so did Thomas Voeckler.
Okay, Harry Enfield to play him in the movie, that's my vote. Now then, finally, the first British winner of any jersey since Robert Miller did it with the King of the Mountains in 1984, the first British wearer of the green jersey ever. Put Mark Cavendish's achievement into some kind of perspective for us?
Well, it's about time, really, isn't it? I mean, the best sprinter in the world for so many years, and it's taken him this long to get into that green jersey, and it was great to see. And at the start of the Tour, it was looking, oh, he's not there, Ferrar's beating him, oh, what's going to happen? But as usual, late start, he clawed his way forward. He kept it dramatic, though, didn't he, by losing those points in the mountains. But at the end of the proverbial footballer's day, he's just the fastest man on the planet at the moment, and he finished it off fantastically.
Yeah, and you know, before we go, we should give a quick nod to the race organisers, a brilliantly designed route this year. You know, it's getting a bit like the Olympics, the Tour de France. We stand here at the end of each edition and declare it the best one ever, or at least since the last one. 2011, though, had 21 fabulous days of racing, usually followed by fabulous music montages. I suspect there's another one coming up now.